Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the farewell tour. So unlike some of the popular rock bands that are out there, we're only going to have one farewell tour. We're not going to repeat. So it's a one and done. It's my 18th year in the Minnesota House, Gary's 16th year in the Minnesota Senate, and over that time we've done many town halls across the district, and we're happy to do one more round today and see folks as we head out to pasture, as I said. But it's been a great pleasure to serve. This session was, I think, given the circumstances, a pretty good session. The main thing I was working on this year was an upgrade to technology, the technology that our counties use to administer a variety of social programs, whether it's Medicaid or SNAP or other programs. The technology that the counties use that is given to them by the state, much of it was designed and put in place in the late 80s, early 90s. It's green screen technology. For those of you that remember the game Pong, you could play Pong on these computers. It's really too bad that it's taken this long. In fact, one of my colleagues, as we were passing the bill off the House floor, one of my colleagues, Steve Jacob, got up and said, "There's one thing wrong with this bill. It's too late. It should have happened 20 years ago." But we did get it passed this year, and very happy that happened. It's going to take time for that to all get put in place. So we did some work last year. That'll come sooner. But it does take time to get these systems designed and purchased and installed and all that. But it's coming, and very happy about that. A number of other things did happen this year, including the passage of a bonding bill. We have a system in Minnesota where there are certain sectors of, especially of our public infrastructure, that are very dependent on bonding. Small towns, especially for their waterworks plants, whether it be wastewater or drinking water, they can't really afford to do it on their own. They need state help, and it's really the bonding bill that gets the funds to PFA, coupled with some federal money, that gets that work done. We were fortunate to get a project here for New Ulm. When it comes to wastewater, the Center Street lift station will be replaced with the money from the bonding bill. It's taken quite a while, as you know, to get that done, but that's kind of the nature of bonding. A lot of these projects don't get funded the first time we ask, so persistence helps. We did a number of things that will help us conform with the federal big beautiful bill that really changed a lot of dynamics within how we relate to state government or federal government, how the state relates to federal government, and we got that done really because you may have heard about HCMC, the big hospital in Minneapolis that is in trouble. It is a very important facility. It does things that no other hospital in Minnesota can do. But it was in financial trouble. When it came time to negotiate at the end of session, my colleague in a negotiating room, as we started talking about the tax bill, he said, well, he's the Democrat, of course, and the Democrat chair of the tax committee for Minneapolis she doesn't like business, period. And he said, if it were our tax bill, here's what the tax bill would look like. Nothing. They didn't want to do a tax bill at all, but because they really wanted money for HCMC, we were able to leverage that back and forth and get a tax bill put together that's good for Minnesota, good for business, good for everybody, really, to do these as much conformity as we can with the federal government. So I will stop there. There's other things we'll talk about. Gary will cover some territory, and we'll be happy to take questions, but thank you all for showing up this morning, and I'll turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Senator Dahms. Although he only served 16 years, so
He was trainable. Well, thank you, Paul, and thank you folks for being here. We certainly appreciate it. It's hard to believe that we've been doing these town hall meetings for 16 years now, and we do 2 a year, so there's been about 32 town hall meetings done, and many of them in this room, and so like to thank the library for hosting us over the years. We really do appreciate that, and you folks for coming. It was an interesting session. It was one of those sessions where there was a lot of things that got done, but not many people paid much attention to them because they weren't the things that ring the bells and turn all the lights and whistles on, but they were things that, some cases by doing nothing was in the best interest of the public. Other cases doing some things was in the best interest. But one of the things that did come out of this bill was the tab fees. And if you folks have been paying attention to your tab fees on your vehicles, they went up considerably. And I mean, a big time jump. And then also they changed the tab fees, but the depreciation schedule was also stretched out. So this year in the negotiations, we ended up taking a 1-year silence on the tab fees. So if starting January 1st of 2027, the tab fees will go back to what they were prior to the increase, and that'll last for 1 year. And that's $254 million that cost is to the state in the reduction of that fee. So needless to say, the Department of Transportation got nervous because this is money goes directly to them. And so they were concerned about losing that $254 million. But we made sure that that didn't happen by backfilling that $254 million out of the general fund. So the State Department of Transportation will continue to get those funds, and we'll backfill it out of there. One thing that did not change was the depreciation. We were able to negotiate a 1 year on the tab fees, and then it'll be kind of see how this election goes. And I think if the DFL continue to have control, it'll probably go back in place. The tab fees will probably go back where they were. I think if the Republicans take over, we'll see those tab fees will be long-term taken away. It's they're quite high. So that was one of the things. There was some property tax relief. There was some relief for property tax. I'm not sure if that's all going to be implemented and just how. And there was some gun legislation that came about, and it did pass out of the Senate, but it didn't make it past that. It didn't go anywhere. So with that said, we'll open it up for questions and comments and go from there. Anybody have? Yes, the lady in the white.
Hi, my name is Karen. So, just the fact that you just brought up about the gun legislation, I am just more curious because this is the thing that I have not been able to find out very much about. I know that you voted against it, sir, and I know that you decided not to have it be brought up into the House. I would like each of your responses to tell me, what was it about that bill that you did not care for to see it being passed or to be implemented?
Sure.
And what would you like to see done better for having more safety for our citizens here in Minnesota
Okay.
regarding guns?
And thank you for the question. It's a fair question. If you've looked at legislation over the years, we start with a little bit and then we keep going and going and going. And once we start eroding the gun rights, it's just going to be a flood, and it's just going to continue to go. The other thing is, and you can sit and shake your head, and that's fine. I mean, everybody has different opinions. The other thing is that we need to deal with the issues. Guns aren't the issue. We have a lot of mental health issues, and we need to try to deal with those issues. Now, for me to say that if we didn't have any guns, that there'd still be a lot of suicide, and a lot of this and a lot of that, and the next thing, I don't know what that ratio would be. I don't know how much it would go down, because there's other instruments that are usable. So I'm not going to be voting on something that's going to diminish the second rights. And I think that we need to look at the true cause of it and manage that. If we take a look at so many other things, alcohol kills a lot of people. We don't take it away. Automobiles kill a lot of people. We don't take them away. We have to look at what the causes are, and what makes you feel good and what makes actually does something. And I think that we need to look at a lot of the other parts of and support those. And at that point, I'll turn it over to Paul.
Well, thank you, Gary. As we, I think, all know, gun control legislation has been extremely controversial for an extremely long time. I think when I was in high school back in the late 60s, I did a paper on gun control. It was controversial then, it's still controversial today. Following the school shooting last summer, the governor came out and promised that he was going to call a special session. Of course, that special session never happened, and the reason it didn't happen is because the votes weren't there to pass what he was proposing. And nothing changed between that last summer and the end of session this year. The votes weren't there to pass what he was proposing. He was proposing, banning a certain type of weapon and magazines. There's just as many people that favor Second Amendment rights as favor gun control, and that battle continues and continues. What we tried to focus on was school safety, because school safety is something that can benefit all kids, but frankly, the DFL, the Democrats, refused to negotiate benefits to school districts to improve the physical safety of the buildings with changes depending on the school district, whether it's a single entrance or in some cases bulletproof windows or whatever the school district thought they could utilize to make their schools safer. They said, well, we won't do that unless you pass gun control. Well, it wasn't going to happen, so nothing happened, very little. We did get a few pieces done in the school safety area, but it wasn't the significant changes that we had hoped to fund to make our schools safer and to make all schools safer. The other big problem is we bring up issues like that in the Democrats say, well, only public schools. We won't give any money to private schools. Well, that's, all kids deserve to be safe. And if we're going to strengthen security in public schools, we should also offer that same opportunity to the private schools, such as Ascension. So it's heartbreaking that we've had these shootings, but shootings continue. As Gary mentioned, we see shootings, not every day, luckily, but just recently there was another shooting in the Twin Cities. And most of those are done with pistols, of course, but this issue has been controversial for a long time. It will be controversial for a long time to come. And as far as school safety goes, what we want to do on our side, was actually make schools themselves safer, so it's harder for criminals to break in. The other thing I would mention is a red flag bill was passed last biennium that would help take guns away from people that have mental issues. But we didn't really promote that as well as we should have, in my opinion. I think we should spend more time talking about the fact that a citizen can identify somebody who they believe is unstable and has access to guns, and those guns can be taken away from somebody that's in that sort of position. I don't think we've emphasized that enough, so that citizens can help keep their own communities safer by identifying somebody who's unstable and has access to guns and get those guns taken away. That's what a red flag law does. We passed it. I have to admit I didn't vote for it, but it did pass, and it should be utilized.
Other questions? Yes.
Thanks for your service and congrats on your retirement. I am disappointed in your positions and votes on gun safety. You also talked about mental health services. What mental health services were augmented this session? And in the bill that helped HCMC, were any funds allocated for Greater Minnesota?
So there were some funds that were made available to hospitals in rural Minnesota. Now, where the rub kind of comes in is you have the PPS hospitals and you have the hospitals that take the Medicare payments as their, so if I go into the doctor under the PPS program, basically, there's an agreement that they're gonna take care of my needs for a year or whatever, and this is a flat fee they're gonna get. Or, when I go in, they turn it under my health insurance, and this is the fee they're gonna get. The ones that have the PPS program are not gonna be eligible for any of those funds. And that is an issue. And we tried to get that changed at the end, but we couldn't get the votes to get that changed. But that is an issue right there. So there, I don't have the exact number of dollars, but there were dollars that have been dedicated to rural Minnesota hospitals. But that's the caveat, the piece of it in there that I didn't like, but that we were unable to get changed. And what was the other part of your
Well, I
question?
can take that if you want.
Okay.
So as far as HCMC goes, there was a 205 million infusion of cash to HCMC because they came to us and said they would be closing this summer if they didn't get some help. So we did, through negotiations, they asked for, I think, 250 million. We proposed 100 and some million. We ended up at that 205 number. But with it came some important restrictions. Number one, they have to get a professional board. The county board in Hennepin County has been managing HCMC. A county board of elected county commissioners is not the experts you need to run a hospital, especially a complicated hospital like HCMC, because they have a lot of charity care patients because they're in a community, they service a lot of poor people. So they have a very high rate of either Medicaid or charity care. And Medicaid, is a government program, but it doesn't pay the full cost of taking care of a patient. So the higher percentage you have of Medicaid patients, the more money you're losing on those. And you make up for those on the private pay side of things, where HCMC does offer very highly specialized care in many areas, especially trauma. They deal with a lot of traumatic injuries, not just from Minneapolis, but the entire state utilizes their services in these very highly specialized areas. So we felt it was appropriate to try and make sure that they didn't go belly up, because that would also put a lot of pressure on other hospitals in the area, like North Memorial and Regions and others. So that's what happened in the short term. Now, we also set aside funds in the long term for any hospital that is in a crisis like HCMC. So if HCMC continues to have a crisis in the future, they can apply for these funds just as other hospitals can. We also set aside, and I'm going to forget the number, a certain amount of funds for critical care hospitals all across the state. Again, I believe it's a grant program that they can apply for. So we know that the hospital situation is challenging for all hospitals, frankly, and it's going to be something that the legislature will be wrestling with going down the road.
Yes.
What was the, I thought the 1% sales tax thing sounded good. And that didn't pass. What are your thoughts about that one for HCMC?
Yeah, so that's
the
a...
twins tax, and the twins came
Right,
out and said they were for it, and
That currently is at 0.15%, I believe. There were a number of proposals to raise that and extend it. We just think Minnesota in general is already taxed enough. Taxing more is not the best answer. Minneapolis already has higher sales taxes than most cities. It tends to drive business out of the city, and if you see what's happening in downtown Minneapolis, they don't need to drive more businesses out, they need to attract businesses in. So we were not in favor of raising that tax or extending that tax, but we did find money for HCMC in other ways. So that was what our position was, and I think to the benefit of Minneapolis, we carried the day. You can't tax your way out of problems in that manner, in my opinion, anyway.
Yes, sir.
I'm Brett Fleck, I'm the Public Utilities Director here in New Ulm, and I'd like to thank you both for securing $4 million for the New Ulm Center Street lift station. We'll be able to complete that project with those funds and remove a big risk to the Minnesota River, as well as reduce our operation and maintenance costs in the long run for being able to provide excellent service to the city of New Ulm. So thank you very much for coming through for us. That was a big win.
Well, thank you, and we were finally able to get that across the finish line. We got close a couple of times, and you know, the funny thing about bonding is, I know of bonding bills that very few times do they get money the first time you put the bill in for it. I've seen some of them go 7 and 8 years before they finally get money. So, but yours was starting to get stretched out there, we were starting to get concerned, but this last trip around, we were able to, Paul and I and other folks were able to get this in the system and get it to the top of the list so that it gets some funding. So appreciate your hanging in there with us, and I think that it's a good for the city of New Ulm. And I must say that I've been in the 16 years, and I have seen very few requests for bonding money, and that did help us this year, making sure that people understood. Go back and look at the record New Ulm has about how many times they come for bonding, and it was minimal. And so certainly you folks deserved it, and glad to see we got it done, and it should help quite a bit. So thank you folks for working on it.
Yeah, you know, projects like that, any bonding project starts with demonstrating the need. I know the Senate bonding committee was here in New Ulm and saw the facility, and the House bonding committee also came to New Ulm, saw the facility, looked inside and realized nobody should go in there. And I know you don't send people in there, but the need was obvious, and that was a big help in getting that project across the finish line. I think, I think the last bonding project in New Ulm was something on the dike, I think, down by the river, if I remember right. It's a number of years ago.
Quite a ways back, yeah.
So it's a bit of a struggle, but we were fortunate. We had 2 bonding bills this cycle. We had one last year. Neither one was huge, but they were both substantial, and satisfying those needs, I think, is appropriate. Some of my colleagues, don't like borrowing money because it adds debt to the state that has to be paid off. But for the right kind of projects, it makes sense. Things like this lift station, things like roads and bridges, things like small town infrastructure. When we start using bonding for things that I personally don't think are appropriate or that should be funded by the community, that's a different story. But these were both good bills. Mary Franson, my colleague that chaired the House side, co-chaired the House side, did great work, and very, very pleased we got it done.
Other questions?
I have a
Yes.
simple question, and it probably doesn't make much sense, but when we talk about all this fraud, who dropped the ball? Or how did it all happen? Or what's your opinion of how it happened? I'm sure.
It's complicated, right? There's no real simple answer to it. In my opinion now, a lot of this kind of started especially grew during COVID. There's always been some fraud, but during the COVID time, there was a lot of money coming from the federal government, and it felt to me like the goal of the administration was to just shovel it out as fast as they could get the money out. They wanted to get it out to try and, the idea was they were trying to preserve the economy, so to speak. And in the process, they were very loose with the rules. So there's that. There's also this perception by the administration that if they shut some of these facilities down, they were going to be seen as racist, because many of these facilities were operated by the Somali community, frankly, and shutting them down, they would turn around and say, well, you're shutting us down because we're Somali. So there was this combination of kind of a perfect storm that came together, and then once these things are happening, we saw that they try to shut down in one area, for instance, the free meals, like Feeding Our Future and other programs. They'd get that tamped down, but the same people would move over to autism, or they move over to daycare, because they now knew how to game the system. And it got way out of hand. And whistleblowers were pushed down. They were told, keep quiet, don't blow the whistle. We will. And so this year we had a dedicated fraud committee in the House. We did pass the Inspector General bill, so there'll be an Office of Inspector General, which will be independent and have its own enforcement authority. In the technology modernization bill, we included 15 million for the technology just for that office so that they can actually access the information they need to enforce fraud investigations. And we've already seen a number of these entities that were in existence have not been reapplying because they don't want to get caught. So I believe we're going to see a substantial change. Getting our money back is a different story, and I'll let Gary give his 2 cents.
Well, it is very complicated, as Paul said. And it's just what's happening is there's a lot more people that have been convicted and put in jail than what we hear about, because so many of these investigations, they're investigating and it leads into a different department or leads into something else. And so they're concerned about how much information they give out as far as the effects it's going to have in some of these other investigations. But give you an example. In going through the education, some things led them into education. They get into education and they realize that this new program, the program to where if a family's under certain income, their children can get free college. Not only is it room and board, not only is it tuition and books, it can be help with paying apartment rent, various things. So lo and behold, they find out that, and you've probably heard the term ghost students. Well, these ghost students are the ones that are taking advantage of that program and they're not going to college. Well, they got into that, and that fraud is pretty deep. And that was totally unexpected. So now they go and investigate the ghost students. I don't know if they'll find anything else, but the point is it just keeps going and going and going. And one department leads to another department, to another department. And so something that's probably looked like it wasn't going to be that big, it looked like it was going to be feeding the future, which is a big deal, but dollar-wise, not as big as what it's going to be at the total end. But I think a lot of cases that the thought was that they could manage that and fix that and get that taken care of without a big blow-up. Well, when they started doing the investigating, it just grew and grew and grew. And that's kind of where it's at today. There is a lot more going on behind the scenes than what we are aware of. There are more people being prosecuted. Getting much of the money back, there'll be some small dollars come back, but getting the real money back probably won't happen, because what they've done in a lot of cases, these people have taken that money out of the country, bought property in other countries that we don't have access to. We don't have a reciprocity program to where we can go in and take that land, sell it, and bring the money back. That land, we can't do that. So that a lot of that money's been spent in other countries buying property, and it's stuff we can't touch. So it's going to probably be a small amount we get back. It's just that we need to get a handle on it so this doesn't continue.
And in the short term, I think the best thing going for us right now is the federal investigators that are in Minnesota. They've already, I think we heard last week, they've charged another 13 people, and there'll be more charges coming. And they're more aggressive, I think, than our state investigators are at this point. So hopefully they continue to do the good work of catching criminals.
It just seems simple to me, like the ghost students. I mean, if they get in little New Ulm, if you get a scholarship when you're a senior in high school, you have to send them in your grades, or you don't get the money. I mean, it seems like somebody dropped the ball here.
Well, I think we need to be.
Maybe I'm just making it too simple, but.
No, I don't think you are. I think that what we have to go back and look at reality, and reality was in 2023. Typically, in a budget year, you spend maybe $2 billion new money. In 2023, they spent $39.5 billion. That money, a lot of that money had to be issued within a 2-year period. We did not have the infrastructure to manage $39.5 billion in new money. And so as Paul alluded to, some of the requirements were loosened up, some of this was done, some of that was done. And in order to get rid of $39.5 billion in 2 years, or in some cases it was extended, that is a lot of money to move out, and we just did not have the infrastructure, technology-wise, people-wise, the whole 9 yards. We did not have that technology, and it's kind of like backing a pickup up to the window and throwing in until it looks like there's enough in that pickup, sending it down the road and bringing another one in and don't write down license numbers, so you don't know where it went. That's certainly a broad exaggeration, but I mean, it was
But
really,
it feels that way.
it just is, unfortunately, that's kind of what was happening. Yep. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Pat from Brown County Heartland Express, thank you both for when I came to St. Paul to always visit with us about rural transit. Paul, I've been to some MCIT meetings and your name was brought up about the green screens, and the thing they really liked is that you've planned for the future. So in 10 years or whenever new systems are needed, your dollars were brought up and they really appreciated that. Just rural transit, you know, I know that there hasn't been a whole lot of action on that. There is some funding shortfalls that are coming and we're kind of concerned about that. Is there anything that you can speak to that?
Well, not much happened this year, honestly. There was not much of a transportation bill this year, but I think rural transit in general has gotten more attention over the last number of years. They'll do a budget next year, and rural transit has gotten better attention than it used to get, for sure. And hopefully we continue to build on that. You supply a very valuable and important service to our residents, and it's appreciated by a lot of people. And I think we're getting better at it too. I think as technology makes these systems more efficient. Is one area where technology can really help to get this door-to-door service in many cases, which is just tremendous for people who have limited mobility. So I'm a big supporter, but of course I won't be there. So, but other people will. So.
And I know there are many states that don't fund transit the way Minnesota does, so many states are very envious of the way we fund transit, so we thank both of you. I know you were on the transportation committee, Paul, and did a lot of work for that, so we want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you for those kind words, appreciate it.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you for your service as well. I have children who live all across the country, so I do a lot of driving as well as flying. But when I'm driving, I am noticing what road conditions are like, what highways are like. I look at what I see in homes and things like that, everything. As much as I don't like to put a lot of money out in taxes, I'll admit that. But I appreciate what Minnesota does do for its citizens. And I know it's a complicated situation of trying to keep a balance, of trying to make sure that we're not putting out more money than what we're taking in. And that is what you all have to do as our representatives. But I just want to say, I do appreciate our state quite a bit. So,
And
thank you.
I think you're right. I think there has to be a balance there. But what we're seeing is the balance has really gotten, there's no balance anymore. It's got very tinted. That is, we have some population growth, but we're having a major reduction in number of taxpayers leaving and the number of taxpayers we have. The last, and I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, so I'm not going to quote numbers, but the last one that we took a look at, we lost quite a few taxpayers, but yet we grew in population. And that's just not going to continue to work. We've got to have a better balance and not lose all these taxpayers. So when we come and talk about paying taxes, it isn't just that I don't like taxes because I'm a Republican. It's because it's driving too many of our taxpayers out of the state. And so that's the balance we have to work at.
And as far as transportation funding, it's always a challenge. Minnesota has lots and lots of road miles. We're a big state and we have lots of roads. They're challenging to maintain because of our climate, and so it's not an easy thing. when I was chair of transportation, prior to that, we would never use transportation money from the general fund. It all was either gas tax or license tab fees. My argument was that we all benefit from a good transportation system. No matter whether you drive or don't drive, you still depend on the system to get the things you need to where you are, whether it's the people that work at the nursing home or the truck that delivers groceries, supplies to the grocery store. So it was in that year that we started taking, not a huge chunk, but a piece of the general fund dedicated to transportation. And they've continued to do that since. We did it again this year to replace that money from the tab fees. I think that's appropriate. I think there's a general benefit to a good transportation system, so using some general fund is appropriate. We also incorporated a small fee on electric vehicles because they don't pay gas tax. So paying for them to pay a little extra is also appropriate. So keeping things in balance is the trick, but we have a big challenge in Minnesota keeping our huge system of roads in good shape. You know, they're going to replace the Blatnick Bridge in between Superior and Duluth. It's like a $3 billion project, I think. I might not have that number exactly right, but it's very expensive. Now, it's a combination of Minnesota, Wisconsin, and the federal government, but that's one bridge that's going to cost lots and lots of money because the cost of replacing the infrastructure has gone sky high.
Time for another question? Any other questions, comments? Well, seeing none, thank you folks very much for being here. We certainly appreciate it. I know we've had our differences over the years, but you know what? That creates conversation. Conversation usually doesn't always, but helps us find resolution to the problems and resolutions to the issues. It's been certainly an honor and a pleasure to serve New Ulm and Brown County in my district. I've had New Ulm and Brown County in my district since day one, so other pieces shifted here and there, and I lost part of Renville and gained part of Blue Earth. You lose a little here, you pick up a little here. But in general, my district stayed pretty much stable over this 16-year period. So it's been an honor and a pleasure, and thank you folks very much, and certainly again, thank the library for allowing us to use this. And I believe this is on your cable. Thank you folks for doing that. And thank you newscasters for being here. We certainly appreciate it. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Paul.
Well, thank you, Gary, and thank you all for showing up today. I want to thank Gary for his years of service. It's been a pleasure to work with him. The fact that we can team up and communicate between the two bodies, the House and Senate, is really a big benefit to our work, and that we can do these town halls together, and it really is helpful. But I also want to thank the voters. None of us would be in office if people didn't vote for us, and well, not everybody votes for us. Enough have voted for us to keep us in office, and I think the stable representation is beneficial to the region. But I want to thank you all and the voters of the district for supporting us, and it's been a pleasure to serve. And it's bittersweet to leave. I think Gary would say the same thing. There's always more projects that you've got in mind that you'd like to continue to work on, but there comes a time in life when it's time to move on, and that time has come for the two of us. But we have good people that are vying for the job. In fact, I'm going to introduce a couple of them right now. Jerry Tice, if you'd stand up. Jerry is the endorsed Republican candidate for my seat. Jerry's from Redwood Falls. She's a real estate agent there. Was endorsed by the Republicans a few weeks ago, and will be on the ballot. I checked at the Secretary of State, and she is registered. And Jerry, you want to just say hello quick?
Hi, everybody. I'm a broker in Redwood Falls. My husband's a county commissioner, was a mayor in Redwood Falls. Been involved with politics our whole life, and been from the district for 5 generations. We know the people. We know how important farming is to our area. We know how important it is to communicate and to fight for our district and bringing this to the cities, or to the Twin Cities capitals. So look forward to any conversations that you might have. As Paul said, I think it's really important that it was Turks, my number is everywhere. If you need a card, let me know, I'll certainly get a hold of you, and don't hesitate to reach out anytime, so.
I call her the upgrade.
Yeah. And he is so wrong, because I go there and I can't tell you how many people enjoy working with Paul. He's been such a great, voting fight for us, the district up there at the Capitol. And, it's been an easy transition coming there because he is so well liked. It just will be very hard to meet that standard. We're gonna do the best we can, so.
And I'll introduce Braxton, but before I do that, I wanted to just thank Paul for the 18 years, or 16 in my case, that we've been able to work together on a lot of these projects and a lot of different things. And so Paul's been a very good mentor and a very good supporter for me, and I do really appreciate the opportunity to work with you. And with that said, Braxton Seifert is from Marshall, Minnesota. He is the endorsed candidate, Republican Party, to replace me. And Braxton works for the local bank in personal lines. He also owns an auctioneering business and owns a rental business. And so a young man that's very involved in the community, very involved in agriculture and things like that. So Braxton, if you just want to say.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, and I really appreciate you guys being here today. You know, it's one of those things that is the foundation of our democracy, to come and listen to the voters, to help understand them and represent them well in St. Paul. And I know Gary and I have talked about it, and we're going to continue to do town halls in New Ulm and across the district, just to understand, you know, what are you guys feeling, understand that, and represent you effectively in St. Paul. And to premise that, I've been doing city tours across the district. I've been to about 23. I was in Sanborn last night. I've been to 23 of the 50 cities in the district. I'll be in New Ulm back here again on Friday. I was with your county administrator and the 14 administrators last week, just again to understand what the voters' needs are. How do we meet the balance of, you know, servicing what the constituency needs while keeping our taxes low as well. So again, yes, I work at Midwest Bank, you know, I write loans and stuff, so my phone number's out there as well, but otherwise, you know, shoot me an email, or I can give you my direct cell as well. And any questions that you guys have for me as we continue along this journey to November, I'd be more than willing to answer.
Well, thank you, folks. We appreciate it.